hello, and welcome back to another amazing episode of Mona's Rants. I'm your host, Mona Sheikh. You guys, I'm very excited. We are at the inauguration week, you guys. I'm still processing that we have President Biden tomorrow and a South Asian.
Hello, and welcome back to
a South Asian and Black woman. Look at that. I'm going off on the other end here. I'm so excited because we have a South Asian and a Black vice president named Kamala Harris, who's going to be making history. And, you know, for an immigrant brown girl like myself, I know that I'm going to get pretty choked up. I mean, I was very choked up that, you know, when Biden won. But I think for me, it's like, it's something that, you know, as immigrant kids, oh my God, I'm getting emotional thinking about it. I think as immigrants, you never see yourself like occupying a position like that. And here's someone like Kamala Harris, like making history, like shattering the glass ceiling, which gives hope to little brown girls and little Black girls to be like, we can do this too. Like, this is a possibility. This is the true American dream. This is the country where you can make it. You can make stuff happen. So I think it's so beautiful. And I'm so excited about the inauguration tomorrow. And, you know, on a side note, I don't know if you guys knew this, but President Biden wanted to take the Amtrak from Delaware to DC. But because of security reasons, because of the attacks that took place on Capitol Hill, the security reasons, they said, nope, you cannot take Amtrak. You gotta, you know, fly in, which is insane because if you really think about all the bans that Trump put in, the Muslim ban, calling Mexicans rapists and all this shit, President Biden's security is not being threatened because of ISIS or because of Mexicans coming through the border. It's because of white supremacists bred and currently living on American soil and breeded right here. Domestic terrorism, baby. Okay, so let's not forget that. But tonight, I wanted to bring my guest back. I had a great conversation the last time I brought him on, and I really wanted to talk about, Biden's talking about on day one, he's going to introduce a bill that is going to make 11 million undocumented immigrants in America a faster pathway to citizenship. And I wanted to bring in an expert who is an expert in immigration because I'm not an expert in immigration. So here's my very amazing friend, the immigration professor, Robert Perkins. How are you?
Hey, nice to see you, Mona.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Very excited.
I got a little emotional talking about Kamala.
That's understandable. That's what an amazing, realization of Martin Luther King's dream. First, you have President Obama, and of course, breaking barriers, and then Kamala Harris breaking even more barriers. So what a wonderful step forward. I mean, I would have thought it would come a little earlier in our history, but better late than never. And let's just be grateful it's happening now.
Yeah, absolutely. So Robert, let's jump into it. So I was doing some research and I found out that the Brookings Institute said that according to them, the undocumented amount of immigrants that we have in America is between 10.5 to 12.5 million, or approximately 3.2% of the U.S. population. What do you think is going? I mean, do you see this as? First of all, do you think it's too ambitious? And second, do you think it's doable?
Well, first of all, I'm curious about the number because for the last 10 plus years, they've had that same number of about 12 million undocumented people. One would think that may have grown some, but so I'm wondering about the number. So it may be more ambitious in a sense than we think, because as I understand the plan, everybody that was here January 1st, 2021 would be eligible in some sense for this program. So it may be a lot more than 12 million.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty ambitious plan. We don't know any details at this point. We know a little bit. We know that there will be a faster path. That it's going to be an 8-year path for most folks.
Yes.
And then it's going to be bifurcated, and those people who are on temporary protected status, and I can get into that if you'd like in a few minutes, if you want to ask some questions at all, or DACA,
Yeah.
Would have a shorter path. So as I understand the general path, it's 8 years to get a green card, and then 3 extra years to naturalize or to be eligible to be a naturalized citizen, and then some sort of, I guess, shorter path than that, perhaps half, 4 years or whatever, for people on TPS, temporary protected status, and DACA, which makes a lot of sense. It's very logical because many of these folks, I think you and I had a conversation about the Salvadorian community here in LA, big community, has TPS, temporary protected status, due to the violence there. They've been here, hardworking, paying taxes, and for many, many years, and they've been vetted already. When you get TPS or DACA, you go through an extensive criminal background check and you disclose anything that's there. So it makes a lot of sense to make the pathway a bit less. Very ambitious plan. How is the government going to handle it? You're right to raise those questions logistically. And, I wish I had answers. The government has made parts of immigration applications, or some of them, very few of them, online. And they've had a lot of problems with that. So good that you're raising some of those questions logistically. What does this mean?
Right. I mean, I'm all for giving up Melania to make 11 million, undocumented immigrant citizens. I am very, very open to that idea. If we could do that, I'm all about it, because I don't think she wants to be here either. But she's I don't know if they're going to come after her for some criminal charges, but this is a good time to do an exchange where 11 million undocumented immigrants can become citizens, and then we can just send Melania back. That would be amazing. But I actually was looking at some of the other bills that are, it's like a package of different bills that they're introducing, right? I was reading like these different things. So Ron McClain, who is Biden's incoming chief of staff, said, he sent a memo to the administration's senior staff, and he said that the new president's agenda includes the immigration bill he will send to Congress on his first day in office. So, and I think what he said was really beautiful. He said, we want to, quote, restore humanity to our immigration system, end quote. And I think that has been missing throughout the Trump administration. I mean, what they single-handedly did to immigrants coming in, 5,000 children gone missing. We still don't know what's happening with those kids. What do you think is Biden's already talking about on first day, like, hey, we're going to go and we're going to resolve that whole children being lost issue, right? He wants to go and crack that down. Robert, how do you find 5,000 missing children, Robert? How do you do that?
Well, I think it's the numbers 500 that are not reunited. I guess the implication is that it just hasn't been a priority for Mr. Trump, right, to do that. So you would need a lot of cooperation with the government, and you need a lot of cooperation between our government and foreign governments in El Salvador and so on, because sometimes the children are still here.
Right.
They're in the custody of either a relative or a foster or somebody else, and the parents may have been deported to El Salvador and some of these other countries. So you're going to need a lot of high cooperation between intelligence agencies and countries, right, to try to bring this about, because it was so messed up. Mm-hmm. And it has to be a priority. You have to make it a priority. I assume that President Trump, because he didn't care about brown people and he didn't care about immigrants, it wasn't a priority for him to get this done. But I think we're seeing a different attitude in the administration that acknowledges who we are as a country, and that we are a melting pot country, and we want to celebrate diversity, strength, and how horrible
Right.
something like this division of the children from their parents has been. So it's going to be a real test to the administration coming in to set it up and execute it.
Right.
Going to require a lot of interagency and intercountry cooperation, as I said. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, back in 1986, when Reagan did that major overhaul, giving 3 million immigrants back then, a pathway to citizenship. Now the numbers, of course, grown to 11 million. I mean, this has been long overdue, right? This has been the overhauling of our immigration system has been long overdue. So Biden administration is talking about hiring more immigration judges to expedite because there's just so many cases that are just backlogged. But all of this sounds really ambitious and it sounds really good. I'm all about that. So I'm going to play devil's advocate, Robert. So of course, on the conservative side, we know what the response is going to be. So the conservative side is going to come out and push back. Although now that Congress and Senate is dominated by Democratic majority, but the conservative side is definitely going to put up a fight, and they're going to come out and say, well, if we go ahead and give 11 million undocumented immigrants, a pathway to citizenship, then what's going to stop other people to just show up and just be like, hey, you know what? Give me, I'm here. Give me a pathway to citizenship. So we're as if you're sending like a whistle out there for people to be like, yeah, just come on in. Our borders open, and we'll just give you a citizenship. That's going to be the argument that the right's going to make.
Well, and I think that there's a big distinction that you can make. There has to be some semblance of policy going forward. So let me be a little clearer about this. Right now, we're dealing with the sins of the past. The sins of the past are, hey, we made it easy for people to come here, at least illegally. We didn't really enforce the law as much as we should have. And so people came, and the penalties weren't so severe for most of them. But in the meantime, and we allowed folks to build their lives here and their livelihoods here. So, and these are people that are contributing and paying into our system. And there's an unfairness about not giving them some path to citizenship. So that's the past. So then you still have to deal with the future. And what is the future of immigration policy? And right now, what the policy is that 98% of the world can't immigrate, no matter how hardworking they are, no matter what the desire is. So there will have to be an understanding of what that system can be going forward and how sane it needs to be. Because, open borders, I think, is not a good policy. The immigration policy needs to reflect the needs of the country. But right now, we actually have a closed legal immigration system where, as I said, 99% of the world can't immigrate. So there has to be an opening to make that process easier so that people don't do it illegally. Mm-hmm. I think that's really the other piece of this. And I think there's an understanding or a misunderstanding on the conservative side that this means open borders. That's not what it means necessarily. What it means is that it's really an opening to redefine what are the country's priorities vis-a-vis immigration. And as I said, if you're an immigrant in El Salvador and you want to come here and you want to work hard, and we can use certain people in different occupations. We had this discussion last time a little bit. Mm-hmm. If you're willing to go and be a busboy in a restaurant, for 3 years or 5 years, or you're willing to work as a maid in a small hotel in North Dakota, then God bless. Right now the system doesn't allow people to do that legally. It doesn't make it really possible. in any practical sense. So, I don't believe, knowing what I know about these clients, that you'd see a lot of illegal immigration in any sense, or open border in another sense, if our needs can match the desire, which just hasn't happened. There just hasn't been any major changes to the way people immigrate in 30, 40 years.
Right.
A rethinking of what the priorities are. Before it was people with degrees and everything in 1990, we had a little bit of a change in that direction, but no acknowledgement that, how many people in the job of live-in nanny that you see are people that are undocumented. I mean, there needs to be that acknowledgement of the reality. And I think that's the response to the conservatives. It's not, is let's make a policy that not only corrects the past, but makes the future in the best interests of the country. And, it doesn't mean necessarily open border, but it means a debate about what are those interests and how do we best facilitate those interests.
Okay, so no open borders. So then what? Do we go back to what Trump was talking about, building a wall? Like what do we go back to?
Well, there's no going back. As far as enforcement goes, the border folks do a terrific job with enforcement these days. They really have modern systems of detection and all that, and so I think we're pretty there as far as enforcement goes, and being able to detect people and everything else. So I think we're okay with that. But I think what it needs to be combined with is, all right, what's our foreign policy vis-a-vis countries that are having these issues or having problems, and what's our domestic policy about who we want and need. So that there has to be a debate about that too.
I mean, we currently do have Border Patrol, but you still have people who want to come in, who want a better life for their families. For a second, I'm gonna kind of switch lanes for a little bit. I'm sure you've heard of the Caravan that is coming from Guatemala. That is a big conversation piece right now. These folks have lost everything. The folks from Honduras who are trying to travel up north, who are trying to come to the Mexican-U.S. border, trying to apply for immigration, trying to get some kind of asylum. I was reading one of the stories of what is happening, and what really, if you kind of just stop and think, you're just like, why would someone risk the life of their children, their entire family, to cross through God knows what borders for safety? And the only reason you would do that is because you have nothing where you are. Absolutely nothing. So it's worth taking a chance to risk your and your family's life for a better future, or to have at least something. I was reading this. They're talking about 7,000 and 8,000 migrants have entered Guatemala since Friday. And of course, the Guatemalan authorities are coming out and saying that they're trying to stop thousands of Hondurans. Many of them are, of course, families with children that are traveling in a migrant van headed for the United States. So they're trying to disperse them, and they're saying, hey, trying to discourage them. And there was this one family that I was reading about. It just really broke my heart. Let's not forget that we are in the middle of a pandemic, okay? And pandemic is just ravaging through the Honduran economy. I mean, it's just pretty much decimated their economy. There's a lady by the name of Maria Jesus Paz, and she's a mother of 4 children. And they talked to her, and she said, we have nothing to feed our children, and thousands of us were left sleeping on the streets. She said, this is why we make this decision, even though we know that the journey could cost us our lives. I mean, there's this other gentleman he talked about. He said, first, I lost my job because of the pandemic, and then I lost my home in the hurricanes. His name is Melvin Paredes. And he said, the only thing I have left is to fight for my family's survival. Biden's administration wants to talk about restoring humanity back into our immigration system. 7,000 to 8,000 migrants headed our way, Robert. Is that something you think the Biden administration is going to be open to bring them in and say, we'll give you some kind of status or at least provide you some kind of relief?
I mean, I think it's the right thing to do. It is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And, what would happen if somehow people from our country had those needs, and I think we got to put ourselves in someone else's shoes for a little bit. 8,000 people is not a real lot. And, and I think we can help in some way.
Yeah.
What way, I guess, is debatable.
Yeah.
But I don't see why we couldn't be of some help to at least let these folks in and allow them to have a place to eat and a place to be for the present, and and go from there.
Robert, I think about the stimulus package, and the stimulus package, like for instance, the stimulus package included a $87 million check for Pakistan, and I wonder if there is a way where we can introduce some kind of relief, some kind of financial relief for Central American countries, and for them to travel, for rather than them trying to trek and risk their lives and probably not even make it here, and possibly die in the process, or raped, or get killed and butchered. What do you think that Biden administration would do something where we're providing financial relief to the Honduran government to be like, here's X amount of dollars, help yourself, try to get your economy in place, help your people, so at least they can put food on the table?
Well, and as I understand it, that's part of what they're proposing. So again, we don't have a lot of detail, but my understanding is that part of this immigration legislation will include aid to some of the countries that are suffering the most in Central America and so forth.
Yeah.
It makes sense because it's a lot easier to feed them there than it's going to be to feed them here.
Right.
And cheaper and all that kind of stuff. So it makes sense.
Robert, and then I guess then it gets into the conversation of, okay, we give them a financial check. Does it actually go to the people, or does the corrupt politicians eat the money up?
Yeah, that's a hard conversation to have, Yeah, I don't know. What do the studies show? Have you read any of that? I have not. So I know.
I don't need to read studies, having someone coming from a country like Pakistan to know how corrupt the governments can be. I really don't know what the Honduran government situation is, but it just sounds like their economy is pretty decimated, and people are desperate. I mean, fuck, if that happened to us, and God forbid we were in a position, we would probably do the same.
Yeah, there are no easy answers here, I think. I think it's, as far as I know, you're right. There have definitely been situations where the money is put in the hands of corrupt politicians there. I think not every case though, and maybe not even the majority of the cases. So
sure.
I think it makes a lot of sense to do that and try to stem the tide and not have people take those amazingly dangerous risks. Makes a lot of sense.
Right. Getting butchered and raped and killed just for a taste of freedom, just for a possibility, maybe, that you'll get to feed your kids and be safe. Like, I mean, it's just wild. Robert, you and I have had a few conversations, and you mentioned to me that during the pandemic, your business has done well. Immigration, your office has been pretty busy and doing well. Is that because you're just getting a lot more people coming and applying for immigration, or is it that the cases are moving further along?
The cases, the processing times are a bit slow right now.
Mm-hmm.
Immigration has stayed open during the pandemic. A lot of people thought it was closed and everything else, but no, it's really been the embassies outside, people immigrating from the outside. That has come to a halt a couple of times, but immigration here in the U.S. is continuing. And I think there's a lot of folks that are immigrants that are essential workers, that are working in your grocery stores, that are working in some of these open businesses. I can tell you a lot of my clients are in construction, which has continued during the pandemic. So that's part of the reason. These are folks that are hardworking people, and they have to really work hard to make those dollars. And so, I mean, very few of my clients are unemployed. They're really folks that are out to work.
Yeah. Robert, it brings me to the point about, just like you mentioned, so many of the essential workers that we've had during the pandemic are, immigrants who are, possibly are undocumented and just trying to make ends meet, risking their lives, risking their families' lives, just to make ends meet, right? Again, just trying to put food on the table. But I wonder, in the past, we've done this thing where where we have a hypocritical point of view of how we deal with immigrants. They're like, oh, we don't want these undocumented immigrants here, but hey, I'll hire you for cheap. I'll hire you for $2 an hour. Yeah, come in and like do my house chores for like $2 an hour. But oh, we don't want any undocumented workers here. So I guess my question is like, how could you be an essential worker and be deportable at the same time?
I mean, it currently exists under the law, and you came illegally, you're subject to deportation. There doesn't have to be any other reason to deport someone other than they came without a visa or their visa's expired. That's it. So you have these situations, and really what it it's interesting, the interplay of public policy. Let's say you have people in some of these jobs that are paying minimum wage or whatever. So why not work on some of those policies, so that people are being paid a decent wage and things like that. So that relates to that. So, maybe it'll be less of a job for exploiting immigrants and this, that, and the other thing.
Right.
Again, to the extent that it's not, and to the extent we need people to be in some of those jobs, and we're not having a lot of Americans that are in those jobs, then why aren't people celebrating the contributions of immigrant workers and the fact that they're willing to do this?
That's right.
For us.
That's right. I mean, if you just go to the farming industry alone, right? I believe I saw this interview a while back. I saw this interview, and they went to these farm owners that were just regular old white folks that owned the farm, and they went and asked them. They're like, "Do you have American citizens who come and apply for this job?" They're like, "Sure." How many days do they last? They said, "Not even a day. Not even a day." They're like, "We're out. We're not doing this. I mean, I have to do this. I'm a citizen. I'm out." And he's like, "But the immigrants that come here, that they bust their butt, they break their backs, man, and they're so hardworking. That is such a prime example of like, wow, man, like people doing whatever it takes to put roof over their heads, right, and to feed their families, and the level of hard work and dedication. Like, I'm sorry, American citizens just get lazy."
Yeah, I mean, I think that's bluntly it with some folks, and people that are immigrants, they really want to make it here. They want to be able to have the American dream and have a house in 5 years or whatever, in a place they can call their own, and stability. Yep. And everything else. I mean, let's say you are in Guatemala or Honduras or somewhere with a lot of gangs. I mean, to be able to even be here and I am again emphasize is a privilege. I mean, and you are willing to sacrifice, a lot. I mean, I have clients that work 2 jobs. They work a day shift and an overnight shift. Wow. People that are working for small manufacturers, a lot of clients that come to me for help and to legalize that they're working the shift from 2 a.m. to 10 a.m.,
Wow.
And, they're willing to do it. And our employers need people like that.
Yep.
You know, especially some of the mid-sized business, smaller business, even the larger businesses, you know, very, very difficult to find people willing to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. If folks have questions, feel free to ask me and Robert, I mean, mostly Robert, questions, so you can just type them in and send them our way. James has a question. He said, do we need ICE, and can and should it be disbanded?
You know, if we're going to have any kind of immigration enforcement, we do need an agency to enforce it, to do the enforcement. So, you know, the real issue with ICE is the lack of training and the institutional attitude that's there. And you get a lot of what I call cop wannabes and people that, and I will say this is not all ICE officers. It's not, you know, people that want to and get an ego boost out of having power over, you know, some immigrant person or however they're going to look at this.
Right.
And that's a shame. So there definitely needs to be a rethinking of, do we need a different agency? Does there need to be an institutional purging? Because for some of the reasons we were talking about earlier in the podcast, the issue is, for the most part, you know, putting the pandemic aside, well, you can't put it completely, but you have a large immigration from south to north. It's not being, we talked about this a little last time, that people are not coming here to put their kids into Harvard. They're starving people. They're a father who cannot feed his children, and the mother who, you know, is making all those choices. You know, I have to take my kids here. My daughter's going to be the gang prostitute, and my son is going to either be killed or be part of a gang and get killed. What am I going to do? So how do we react to that? And to have these cop wannabes be in charge of how we greet people and treat people is not right. And so you know, there may need to be, and probably does, a different and newly constituted agency that has better training on how to treat people, because the people that Customs Border Patrol and ICE, which is, you know, the larger agency, they, if you look at it, they are the people that are greeting people from all over the world. And I get it that, you know, there are security risks and threats and everything else, but I have all too often in my practice seen that power abused and misused, really. Let me give you an example. I have had 2 cases now. There's no visa, unfortunately. That's the live-in boyfriend or girlfriend visa. Doesn't exist. And so what ends up happening is that the boyfriend or girlfriend comes over on a tourist visa to maybe live with their partner for some months to see, is this relationship working or whatever. And so what's happened is, in ICE is like, hey, this person isn't a tourist. They're going to immigrate, and therefore I can deport them, or I can abuse them, or everything else. I had a young lady from Thailand who came in, and she was about 28 years old, and she was coming to visit her boyfriend. They're pretty sure they were going to get married. And he had been to Thailand. He was a journalist. She was a journalist. They met. Beautiful, beautiful couple. And they ended up doing a vaginal search of her. They ended up classifying her as a prostitute and entering a deportation order against her and all this other stuff, because they found texts between her and the boyfriend and all this other stuff. Like, this is just a simple relationship, folks. You know, to have let her in on a tourist visa wasn't going to hurt anybody. these were very law-abiding people that, would have applied for a green card. The man's a citizen, the woman's not. Had it happen also to a young lady from New Zealand, beautiful young lady who had done some modeling in LA. A guy saw her and met her through a friend, and then eventually they started relationship, came back, and she was detained in immigration jail for 5 days, and then they eventually sent her back, and we eventually sued the government and all that other stuff. So it's, there's a lot of abuse that goes on. LAX, by the way, is one of the more abusive places around, and unfortunately, there's this kind of, as I said, institutional attitude.
Yes.
That you find where people aren't really looking at the larger picture here. Yes, of course, you don't want terrorists coming in. Yes, of course, you want to deter against drug dealing and other kinds of things. But oh my God, they really want to live together and get married. Boom. I can assert my authority. And look power, and it's got to be purged. That's the long answer to the short question, but also some reasons why there's this institutional mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You are not only our enforcers, but you are also our ambassadors, and they need special training to walk that line in the right way. People from other countries complain. They actually have abused former the sons and daughters of president of the UN. I mean, it happened. Yeah. So it's embarrassing, and it's cruel. It's unnecessarily cruel, and you need people that have a sense of the bigger picture.
Robert, two things you reminded me of. So I don't know how much you know about Bollywood, but Bollywood's biggest star, their mega star, who's richer than Tom Cruise and more famous than Tom Cruise, but Americans don't know him because he's famous all around the world. He's famous in America too, I guess a lot of people know. His name is Shah Rukh Khan, and he talked about how he showed up and they detained him at the airport, and they investigated him as if he was like some criminal, and he was just like, I'm probably the biggest star in the world. Like, just because you don't know me. He's like, yo, Google. And he honestly, he had such a lighthearted attitude towards it. I would have been pissed, but he was so nice about it. And I was like, wow. And speaking of LAX being notorious, my mom was coming in. She was coming in from Pakistan. My mom was a U.S. citizen. And they held her at LAX, and they kept her there for 5 or 6 hours.
Have no. That's very interesting. You might want to sue them because they have no jurisdiction over U.S. citizens. And in fact, it's interesting. We've had a case where a U.S. citizen was wrongfully deported, and ICE had to pay out a lot of money.
Wow.
So I don't know what the particulars are with your mother, or if you want to get into that here, but there is a Federal Tort Claims Act where you could sue the federal government for those types of things. So there may be a cause of action there. Yeah.
My mom was a green card holder at the time. She recently became a citizen, but she was still a green card holder. So it's not like, she's she's not doing anything, unlawful. And they kept her at the airport for 5 hours. Then they handcuffed her, kept her in handcuffs, saying that we have some information, something doesn't match. And then my mom was just they were like, do you have someone here? So I'm like an asshole waiting outside for 2 hours. And I'm just like, did my mom get lost? Did the plane not arrive? So I see all the people coming out, and I'm just like, so I go to the to the booth, to the a booth of the airline, and I'm like, did this person land? And they were like, yeah, she's here. I'm like, where is she? I'm trying to get in touch with her. Finally, 2 immigration officers come outside. And they're like, is that your mom? I'm like, yes. I'm like, where is my mom? And they're like, well, there's some misunderstanding about some, paperwork and something about her name not being, her last name is not matching or some shit, right? So I'm like, so where is she? They're like, well, we have her in handcuffs. I'm like, you have my mother in handcuffs?
Oh boy.
They're like, yeah, we have her in handcuffs. I'm like, my mom has high blood pressure. I'm like, did you give her water? Did you make sure that she's taking her medication? Like her, blood pressure must be skyrocketing because she must be scared as hell. Like what the fuck is going on? And then you know what? You know why they loosened their grip up on my mother and me? It's because I told them that I'm a stand-up comic and I was cracking jokes with them, and they're like, "You're all right, you're born and raised here. You guys are cool." And then within 10 minutes, my mom came out. Is this what the fuck it has to take, Robert?
It shouldn't be. I think, even in talking with you a little and thinking about some of these scenarios you and I have raised, that maybe forming a different kind of agency with different training and mission,
yes,
would be a better way to handle this. Because again, these are people greeting people from the world, and you can still spot problems and deal with them in a nicer way than I've had them swear at people and berate them verbally and accuse all kinds of infantile kind of things that were not appropriate to the situation. And
I mean, Robert, my whole journey of becoming a U.S. citizen, first of all, it took me like 15 years to become a U.S. citizen of just eating absolute giant piles of crap just to become a U.S. citizen. And the straw that really broke the camel's back was in 2005. My father was visiting. My father was never lived here, never really wanted to live in America. He always wanted to live in Pakistan. He had a big business there. He did, well for himself. So he was like, I really don't want to live in America. So when my father was visiting, he went back, and my father had a brain hemorrhage, and he was in the hospital. And the doctor were like, he's not going to make it. So my paperwork got stuck, in the process of becoming just getting my green card in the process was stuck during the Bush era, right? So I go to immigration and I'm like, hey, listen, I need to travel. Like, I need to go see my father. It took me 3 years just to get the interview date. 3 years just to get the interview date. I go to immigration and I'm like, my father is dying. I need to go. Like, you need to give me some kind of permission where you're not gonna not let me back in. They're like, ma'am, if you leave, you cannot come back for 10 years. We will put this against you. I'm like, but this is an emergency situation. My father is dying. I'll never get to say goodbye to my father. And they're like, sorry, not our problem. My father died. I never attended his funeral. I never got a chance to say goodbye to him. I mean, these are not things that you can just dismiss. This is something that just scars you for life, right? And my story is just one of many.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you got caught by the unlawful presence bar, and that's it's just too bad again, because I don't think that it's interesting. A lot of the the Mexican American bar and some of the other folks have been trying to get rid of that for a long time. So because the impact has been on mostly people that you wouldn't want to have the impact on, like your situation,
Robert, I just think that it boils down to economics. Like, you're talking about forming different groups, right? Like, when you meet, like, I remember meeting immigration officers and being like, you can hardly put two sentences together. Like, how much are you getting paid? 40,000, 45, 50 tops? How much are you getting paid, right? I feel like it boils down to economics. It boils down to the quality of people that you recruit. Because if you pay less amount of money to people to become immigration officers, well, guess what? Probably they're not that qualified. Maybe they're not even that educated. I don't know what the requirement is to become an immigration officer. Same goes for people at Homeland Security when people come in at the border. People that come in LAX or land in New York or wherever, right? You're talking about economics. You're talking about education and information level. You're talking about people not being given enough training or being educated or being even trained in some kind of sensitivity or some kind of awareness. Like, hey, you're dealing with folks coming in internationally. They're not criminals. They're coming here for a purpose.
Well, and I think I think I would disagree with you a little. I mean, we have asylum officers, and the qualifications are the same for asylum officers as generally immigration officers. It's basically a bachelor's degree, and asylum officers get special training in how to interview people that have been through persecution and post-traumatic stress and all these other things. So I don't see why the government can't do that in the ICE arena, with enforcement, and recognizing that it's, as we said, it's not just an enforcement agency. They are also the first folks that are seen by somebody coming off the plane from another country, in a way, our ambassadors to other folk. And so there's got to be a better line that's walked here.
Yeah.
I think that training, it already is provided to asylum officers in a kind of different context, sensitivity, and so forth. So I don't see any reason why we can't do it for ICE, and maybe a different agency, forming a different agency with some different personnel and different training.
Yeah. Andre here said, wow, that's awful, to my story. Yes, it was awful. And he said, I actually got recruited in 2009. Back then it was $47K to start, and no bachelor's degree was required. Wow.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Is that for, Andre, is that for an asylum officer, or what? Robert, asylum officers, you said that their training is similar to the officers who sit at the border, or who sit at.
It's not. No, I apologize to the extent I was not clear. It is different, and they are specifically trained in, to be very compassionate and calm, and all the good things, and recognizing that people that are coming in and telling the stories about persecution in other countries. Thanks, Andre. That they may not be able to communicate really well because of all the trauma.
Yeah.
And I think they go through a special training for how to ask them questions, how to try to be relaxed during an interview, and give them a chance to express themselves, and so forth and so on. So I think it's a little different in the context of, being an airport person for Customs Border Patrol or whatever, but similar kind of concepts, I think, can apply. You're dealing with someone coming from another country. Keep in mind the big picture, that not only do we want to, is our mission to grab somebody or whatever, ferret out danger, but it's also to greet people that are coming in for whatever normal kind of purposes that people come in.
Right. Right.
So,
Robert, my story was then finally getting my, just to even get to my green card, was just to kind of put a button to that story. So while my father was in the hospital dying, I was reaching out to different organizations and being like, hey, my paperwork's stuck. And they don't give a shit. They won't release my immigration. They won't give me traveling papers. They won't give me permission. And right after my father passed away, literally maybe 2 weeks after my father passed away, I had reached out to this Muslim organization, I forgot, and they had their lawyer get in touch with my lawyer. And because they are a pretty big organization and have a lot of contacts, they put me in touch directly with the head of immigration in New York, because that's where I lived at the time. And the head of New York wrote me a personal letter apologizing for not letting me travel, apologizing that I couldn't say goodbye to my father, and that they were personally, that she was just like, I will personally go and put this in front of the immigration officer for it to be expedited and processed, so you can go and at least visit his grave.
Yeah, it's
And
unfortunate,
it shouldn't have
but
to take that. It shouldn't require that, Robert. It shouldn't have to.
no, it shouldn't. And yeah, that even begs the further question of immigration officers and how much training they get and everything else. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Robert, your cases that you mentioned, the Thai lady and the lady from Thailand, the journalist, and the one from New Zealand, were they able to get back into the country? Were you able to fight and like resolve that? I mean, how did that work?
Yeah, the lady from Thailand, actually, her husband went over there, got married to her. We filed, but she had to wait for a year over there until she came over with a green card. So, and the incident permanently scarred her. She has had to be in therapy ever since that time. And anytime she even thinks about encountering with the government, uh, it just gives her, horrible anxiety.
The-
Yeah. So,
I mean, I can tell you, Robert, having having dealt with immigration for a long period of time, they always make you feel like you're a criminal. You always made to feel like you are less than. They always made to feel like as if you're coming to steal something from someone. And it's just like, I'm not coming to do any of that, right?
right.
I've done all the right steps. I'm doing all the right things. Then why are you making me feel less
Well,
than?
because these people need to feel more than, because these people that are hired, they feel less than, they're not the best people. They're cop wannabes and power hungry folk. And so again, there needs to be a new agency with a new mission and maybe better standards of education and training and all that kind of stuff, because our standing in the world is very important, and our standing, you talk about an actor who's the number one actor in the world in Bollywood. And does that person, luckily he, you said, well, he kind of, took it in stride in a way, but I'll bet that his impression of our country is not enhanced by what happened. I mean,
Not in the slightest. It's like,
and
he's a very chill guy. He was like very chill about it. He was just like, I'm just gonna go back to my millions of dollars. I'm fine. But I mean, this guy owns like 5 jets. Like he doesn't like he's fine.
And we want someone like that coming and flying his jets here and putting a lot of money into a lot of pockets. And unfortunately, for a long time, our country has been kind of closed. I mean, it's not just Trump. Trump was the worst xenophobic reasons, but even, before then, our country's reputation was not welcoming. And it's not welcoming for commerce. We have companies, there's a specific visa, for example, called an L1, which is for companies that are multinationals that are opening branches, subsidiaries here and transferring people in. President Obama personally told immigration, you got to be better about these, because they were fighting like hell and denying, companies. I had a company in Germany, 300 employees came to me with a denial. They do millions of dollars in business in the United States. They had a denial, flagrantly misinterpreting the law and even outright ignoring past precedent, some of these immigration officers. And it's just gotten to the point where, they're like, oh, I can find something wrong with this. And this is millions of dollars that our country could use. I mean, jobs that, the company was right about to hire 3 new people. I mean, there have been, this type of thing's been going on for a long time. And there's been a lot of complaints. I remember during George W's administration, a lot of complaints from companies overseas in Europe and a lot of different countries about it's impairing commerce. And, so there's just this kind of meathead, blockhead attitude,
Yeah.
and of course Trump was the embodiment of all of that, the worst elements of that. But and it's funny because there's a part of me trying to look at something good when he was elected, although it was so depressing. Well, he's a businessman, maybe he'll have a businessman's look. Didn't.
I mean, Ben, the economy is pretty much in shambles right now, right? I mean, President Biden has a lot of work cut out for himself, like a lot. I mean, this is a lot of work cut out, right? Getting the pandemic under control. I mean, just what was it yesterday that Trump came out and said his ministry, they came out and said, oh, we're going to lift the ban of folks coming in from UK, Ireland, and Brazil. And then the spokesperson from the Biden administration was like, excuse me, come the January 26th, you are no longer the president of the United States, so you no longer get to pull the shots. We will keep the, basically travel restrictions as they are because the pandemic is out of control right now. I mean, I live in LA County. What is it? They're talking about 1 out of 4 people here are infected.
One out of 3.
1 out of 3.
Yeah.
1 out of 3.
Yeah, it's it's part of a broader conversation. I know you brought me in to talk about immigration, but what do we do about some of these larger attitudes and problems, and what do we do about the ignorance and racism in our country generally? There really needs to be some concrete steps, both to reach out to the 75 million people that supported Trump, because we can't just dismiss them all, as much as some of us sometimes have that inclination, myself included, but I think it's a real failure of education and everything else. And so why are so many people not understanding what, in my mind, at least, our country is supposed to be about? Not only freedom, but equality. There's a blend of freedom and equality. And the equality piece of this has been subsumed by fear. And so it's a real issue. And I welcome comments. It's a tough issue.
Fear of what, Robert? Fear of what? Fear of what? That this will no longer be a white country? This will no longer be a white country where immigrants are going to come and brown and black people are going to dominate? I mean, what's the fear?
Fear of change, entitlement, and those are the fears. But with that, a non-recognition of reality, that really there's not a hell of a lot of difference between immigrants that are coming here from wherever, from Pakistan, from Mexico, from El Salvador, and your great-grandparents that came from Ireland. That hard work ethic. As we said, I mean, people come here because they want to work.
That's right.
Let me repeat. And I've been dealing with immigrants and immigration law as my way of life for 31 years. Very seldom, I will say it's happened twice, that I saw people, how do we get my parents in so they can go on welfare? Twice in 31, thousands of clients.
Wow.
All want to work, all to pay my fees as an attorney. People working 2 jobs, people working those overnight shifts, people making incredible sacrifice. I mean, these are blue-collar workers that not only have the pain and suffering of every other blue-collar worker in this country, but also having to deal with the uncertainty of maybe having to leave at some point, the stress of that. And having to pay their lawyer, that's a lot on people. The sacrifices people make. If anything, whether you agree or disagree or whatever, this is worthy of respect. And to disrespect, to me, is a heartbreaking thing. It's an act against God to disrespect people like that. People deserve to be treated with respect, especially people like this.
Yeah.
And, to treat people with cruelty, to separate them from their kids. I mean, for God's sake, it's 2020.
21. We left that, Robert.
You're I need another.
Robert, God, you barely made it out, man. We're 2021. My God. I mean, first of all, very well said, Robert. Very, very well said. That was really heartfelt and very, very well said. I think there is this, if you live, I don't know, Mississippi, Alabama, North Dakota, South Dakota, you have this impression of immigrants coming in, immigrants like myself, somebody coming from Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, wherever, that somehow that we are just coming here to mooch off the government. And that somehow that even if you don't have papers, you can still mooch off the government. And that level of ignorance needs to end. So the question becomes, how do you end that ignorance? How do you end it? Like what? President Biden has to go on, in front of the press and be like, look, this is not how this works. You can't not have a Social Security. First of all, you need a Social Security, and it is super hard to get a Social Security now than ever before.
Yeah. Social
Security, everything in your life as a citizen or a green card holder or somebody of any kind of status in America revolves around a fucking Social Security. So let's get that out of the way. But if you came here with no papers, you came here to survive, you came here for a better life, and you don't have that, there is no way in hell you can apply for any kind of, support from the government. And
that's exactly right. And that's, they eliminated any kind of federal benefits for any undocumented people in 1996. So it's 24 years that anything and everything has been essentially eliminated. So, some states will do it, especially for medical care, whatever, for different reasons. But federal government, it's been gone for a long time. And so, folks are making incredible sacrifices. I represent a lady from China who came here and was in a very abusive marriage. Unfortunately, didn't get into the right immigration lawyer hands years ago. And long and short of it is she's now waiting for a visa finally. But in the meantime, she has no health insurance and no Social Security number. She will soon. She's had to wait 6 years in line, and fairly soon she should get everything. But she's actually friendly with a very dear friend of mine, so I know her on a little bit more of a personal level, and I'm always joking with her about her working out. And one night she said to me, Robert, I have to really keep myself in top shape because I can't afford to get sick and I can't afford the health insurance. Yeah. This is my health insurance, is going to the health club and really trying to keep up my system and my immune system and all those different things. And this woman works very, very hard. And I mean, it's interesting because she's been exploited work-wise by a member of her own community from China. And it's very, very sad, who keeps her at a very low wage, and because she doesn't have any work authorization, she doesn't feel comfortable trying to leave the job, change jobs, whatever. So it's very, very difficult sacrifices that people are making right now. And there needs to be a more sane system overall. We're kind of circling back, to that conversation about enforcement. Do we want to let everybody in? Well, probably not. Do we want to be humane, compassionate? Yes. Do we want to be reasonable? Yes. Do we need a system of immigration that's more logical and facilitates a legal immigration? I think the answer is yes. And then when we get these emergency situations, let's be compassionate. Let's understand that that this is the right thing to do. And incidentally, you and I talked about this last time. Those situations could even be dealt with better from a policy standpoint. These 8,000 people, they say to them, all right, you can claim asylum, but I'll tell you what, if you want to have a work visa for the next few years, go work. There's this town in South Dakota that everybody's left, and there's older people that need a younger workforce. Or, there could be a more dynamic system that meets the needs of the country. And I'm very delighted that that President Biden is taking bold steps on this. And I think hopefully that there will be some thought about this process, because we are living in an aging country.
Yep.
We are living in a country where you have the baby boomers retiring a lot, and medical problems a lot, and need of support a lot. Who's going to provide that? Who's going to pay into the Social Security system? Immigrants. That's what it needs to be.
That's right. Robert, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was going to be my next topic of discussion about exactly that, right? Just like reforming of like some level of like on a legislative level, right? You're talking about legislation being changed. It also kind of it also makes me want to think like, how does this bleed into our foreign policies? Some of our foreign policies are wicked, to say the least, right? They're not nice, if I can say it so nicely. They are, when we deal with international countries, we always, think in terms of like, we put ourselves first. Okay, I mean, all countries do put themselves first, but we also have a way of where our foreign policies have not served us. They have hurt us, because people who were in charge of putting those foreign policies in place came from with an intention of very, very selfishness, and less from a compassion, and probably less from a humane point of view. So how much do you think a conversation about foreign policy is going to come into play in lieu of immigration policy?
I think that we made this connection at the beginning of the conversation. We were talking about Central America and South America, and we touched a little on this in our last conversation, but and you're a little younger than me, so I'm going to make this analogy, and we may have made it before, but I never, and people of my generation never would have thought that the Iron Curtain would fall, the Soviet Union would fall. That was the reality. And we let those people in and claimed asylum. We thought it was indefinite. Science fiction movies, 2001 Space Odyssey was made. There were the Russians, and they were fighting with the Americans, and we thought this was going to last forever. It didn't. The situation with Central America and South America and Mexico, it will not last forever. The question is, who are we? What do we do in the meantime? It is an issue, you are correct, of foreign policy. It is an issue of how to deal with those countries and help those countries, because I'll tell you, in 10 or 20 years, those countries are going to be up and coming countries. They're not going to be the third world forever.
That's right.
And so I think.
I hope so, Robert. I mean, as somebody from Pakistan, I definitely pray to God that is the case.
Nothing's forever, and it's not. And what we do today defines us. And think of what a beautiful legacy America has of restoring Europe after World War II through the Marshall Plan, being a welcoming country to survivors of the Holocaust, helping facilitate all of the different institutions that came after World War II. How did people look at us? And what a country we were at that time. So and how much goodwill we had. So I think, it's going to take a lot to get us back on that path again. I'm so thrilled that one of Joe Biden's first steps is to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord.
Thank
and
you.
to be part of the world again.
Right.
And
And lifting the Muslim ban. That's one of the first things he's going to do, lifting the Muslim ban. I mean, Robert, let's be real, okay? These whole security measures of like what 20,000 National Guard being, deployed to DC, and the security's like freaking insane in DC right now. And that's not because ISIS is here. That's not because there were these gang members coming in from Mexico. It wasn't none of that, right? It was because we have homegrown terrorists who are threatening the safety and life of an incoming president and an incoming VP.
well, it's very gratifying to see Joe Biden in office. It's very gratifying to see that he understands that the time to pass legislation is now. And I'm very, very excited and curious, how is he going to address, and the rest of the country going to address, these people that feel so left out and they feel they need to join a white nationalist group, or they have mental disorders. I mean, there's a lot to address. And, and so I don't know the answers. I know that things do need to get done. How do we address this huge economic disparity? Sorry, I'm losing my English. Disparity.
That's what happens, Robert, when you hang out with an immigrant like myself. That's what I do. I make you forget your English.
Yes, you do.
If you start speaking Urdu right now, I mean, I would be just so pleased.
There we go. I'll start speaking Urdu. There we go. But anyway, I think we need to reach out to those communities and start to say, hey, what are the answers here? I mean, we're not going to get it right away. We're not going to get it right the first time. But we tried in the 1960s, and we had some success with creating very direct legislation: can't discriminate, Voting Rights Act, affirmative action. What are the next steps? That's the next question. That's why we have the Black Lives Matter movement. That's what are the next steps to create a more perfect union here? Yeah. Those are some wonderful questions, and and make a better country.
Yes, that indeed is just putting us back on the path of being great.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, and again, I have no answers. I just know that there needs to be things that are tried. Why does this person in Alabama that waves the Confederate flag, why don't they feel proud that an immigrant that settled here and became a U.S. citizen won the Nobel Peace Prize for chemistry or physics in America? Why wouldn't they think that that's a good thing? And to make some of those connections. How do we bring people back into the tent? Because we have to. I hate to say it because it's very hard. I mean, I feel resentment. I will say it. I will say it live on air, but for people that voted for Donald Trump. A lot.
I think I've had about over 100 episodes dedicated to that. So I think.
Well, yeah, but the solution is not hate as much as sometimes it's frustrating, and we feel that, and I do too.
Yeah.
The solution is to ask ourselves what went wrong, and how do we connect people more? How do we reach out and bridge some of these gaps? And so that's where I'm hoping and praying Joe Biden goes. He's certainly got a lot on his plate, but let's
also shout out to President Biden for electing 15 Indian Americans to be part of this administration. 15.
We have some very brilliant people in that community. And God bless, God bless. I have the privilege of serving many communities in the United States. It's just remarkable how much talent our country attracts, and again, reaching out to other people and really getting them to acknowledge the reality.
Yeah.
It's as much as I disagreed with someone like Ronald Reagan, he recognized how important this was.
I think your Google's talking to you, Robert.
My Google's always talking to me.
Google's always listening. Alexa's always listening. It's super creepy. Oh no, Alexa, stop. Goodness, my Alexa's going off now. Jesus. I actually, Robert, you and I were talking about. You said that you had a lecture that you gave, or you and.
Well, I was telling you that. So we're talking a little bit about how most folks don't realize that it's very hard to immigrate to the United States. 98% of people in the world can't. They don't have the kind of connection or spouse or mother or father or kid that's a U.S. citizen to be able to immigrate here. And so what I can do is I actually have been training my staff on basic immigration, and I can put some of this on the website on my blog about some of the basic parts of the system and how it works. And I think maybe people can get a little more enlightened. So
yeah, that'd be amazing. No, I definitely want to. We're going to start wrapping up in about 2 minutes, but I want to hear what Alicia Thomas has to say. She says, "Hi, Robert. We are the United States. How are we defining unity? We need to shift our policy." Yes, Alicia, that's what I think we've been talking about for the past hour 15. I hope you would take the time to go back and listen to some of the stuff that Robert was so kind enough to inform us and give us his wealth of knowledge. But Robert, do you want to respond to that?
Well, yeah. I mean, Alicia, that's a really wonderful question. I think part of this needs to be a looking or examination of what are our shared values. What are our shared values? How can we, and this has always been present throughout American history, where we do value freedom, free speech, free press, all the different freedoms, individuality and freedom that we have, but we also value equality. And so how do we blend those things together, and create that balance? I think that's got to be a discussion, and we need to reach out to those 75 million. How do we reach out? How do we create a shared system of values with everybody to some extent? I mean, no one's going to see everything the same. We're all different people, but it's a real challenge. You think about World War II, the fact of service in World War II brought people together in a very concrete way. You may be some white guy from Alabama in a rural area, and I might be an African American from the south side of Chicago, but you served in the 42nd. Oh, I served in the 47th. Yeah, we were part of the storming of Germany. And, whatever, there was some shared things. So question is how to create that. I think that's where there really needs to be a national discussion and really taking the discussion and creating policy, education, awareness, and connection.
Yes.
And connection.
Robert, it feels like, we were talking about this, the entire episode's been dedicated about, immigration overhaul that's going to take place under the Biden administration. But it also sounds like what you're talking about is more of a cultural overhaul in America, where, you're talking about information, you're talking about like confronting and having tough discussions, like tough topics, right? Hard decisions where, you're sitting down and actually talking about, like, what is your problem? Like, why are you so mad, at Black or brown people? Like, what is your beef? I think these are tough discussions.
It's more a fear, I think, on some of those people of and feeling bad about their own selves, I think, and how do we elevate them to the point where they can then be receptive, or how does that work? I'm not a sociologist or a psychologist, and I can't address those things. I do know immigration policy is really important, and it connects with so many other things. I mean, think about it. I'll summarize. I'm a teacher, so we like to summarize at the end.
You are the immigration professor, Robert.
I'm not only a teacher, I'm the professor. So in any event, think about it. We talked about businesses coming and investing here and spending money here and creating jobs. And we talked about workers and employment policy and minimum wage and how that connects with immigration. A lot. We talked about culture, value, and diversity and how that connects in. So if you think about it, immigration policy needs to be real cohesive and consistent with general policy national. Who are we as a country? What do we stand for? What are our shared values? Immigration has been traditionally a shared value. Where did we go wrong in conveying that to 75 million people? Very interesting to watch the final speech of Ronald Reagan, talking about immigration and how important immigration is to our country and to the policy, or one of the last acts of Donald Trump, building a wall. What has happened, and where can we find some common ground? So that's.
Well, Robert, that wall never got built. The only wall that ever got built is the one that Melania Trump built between him and herself. That's the only wall that ever got built. Robert Perkins, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for all this, for your generous time, for your generous information. Where can people follow you? Where can they check out your services if they're looking for immigration? Where can they find you?
Well, my website is immigrationprofessor.com. Repeat, immigrationprofessor.com. We have also a Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, all under the Immigration Professor. Our firm operates throughout the nation. We have offices in Culver City, outside Los Angeles, in Chicago, in Davenport, Iowa. I have an office out there. So we're all over the place. And
the Immigration Professor or Immigration Professor?
It's just immigrationprofessor.com. So
okay.
Yeah, we serve people all over the country because immigration law is federal, and appreciate the plug, and and appreciate what you do. I think these are important issues to be sort of airing out right now, and as raw as you air them out. I think that's the way to do it, is just straight up.
Yes. With every topic I talk about, I try to make sure that I bring in personal stories, because I think it makes it that much more human. It makes it that much more real. It makes it that much more something that you connect to, because if I don't sit here and talk about how difficult it was for me to lose my dad and never to be able to say goodbye, that's like, I think that's every maybe child's worst nightmare. Like, to never be able to say goodbye to your parent while they're dying because the country you reside in doesn't want you to go and visit them. Like, that's sad.
I can't tell you how many times in my practice that I have had clients experiencing this, that they have had parents die, grandparents, separated from their children, just very difficult. And adding into the sacrifice that people make, we talked about people working 2 jobs or working a night shift from midnight to 10 in the morning, whatever, but not being able to see your family for years and sending money back and all those things are a common part of what I've seen in 31 years of doing this. And these people, regardless of what your belief is, again, about the immigration system or in or out or people deserve respect.
Yes, agreed.
And to be treated with respect.
Agreed. Human dignity is, everyone deserves human dignity.
My grandmother taught me treat everybody with respect.
Yeah, absolutely. Robert Perkins, this has been a great conversation. Thank you very much. I will speak to you soon.
A pleasure, Mona, as usual. Keep doing what you do.
I will. Thank you, Robert. Take care.
Bye-bye now. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. That was the lovely Robert Perkins. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. I know I definitely did, and I learned so much every time Robert comes on. I just feel a little smarter because Robert helps me become a little smarter about this, about immigration. You guys, if you haven't followed me on my YouTube channel, please do. It would really mean the world to me. You can go, you see the ticker in the bottom that has, you can follow me on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Mona, last name Sheikh Comedian. So it's Shake It, Don't Break It. Mona Sheikh Comedian. I am also on TikTok at also Mona Sheikh Comedian. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Mona's Comedy, on Facebook at Mona Sheikh Comedian. And you guys, I am like a little over 2/3 of the way of getting my YouTube channel monetized. So if you can please go and subscribe to it, if you can share it on your social media, if you can just watch my playlist of my rants, of my comedy, of Minority Reports podcast, which I do every Thursday and Friday, it would really mean the world to me. I have Congresswoman Katie Hill, who I had the pleasure of interviewing. You can find my interview there with Congresswoman Katie Hill under the Minority Reports podcast and digital series playlist. You can find my interview with Margaret Cho. You can find my interview with Rula Jibril. You can find my interview with Trey Crowder, who goes by the Liberal Redneck, and he's amazing. And you guys, this is incredible. I'm just so grateful that I was able to do this with Robert on the inauguration evening, because tomorrow is going to be a bright day because we are going to have a new president named President Joe Biden, and the first South Asian / Black vice president female ever to take office, named Kamala Devi Harris. And I'm very excited. You guys have a good night. I will be back tomorrow with a brand new guest. We are doing a special inauguration day special episode tomorrow at 6:15 Pacific. So please do come join us. I'm going to be bringing on my fellow comedian friend Raj Sharma, and I'm going to have a couple of other surprises for you guys. Guys, stay safe out there. Wear your mask, social distance. Have a good